call this meeting to order and welcome to the sixth meeting of the Special Committee of the House on the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference. I would ask you to wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. And when you are ready to speak, please activate your mic. When you are not speaking, leave your mic on mute. And please change your language when you change channels.
Honorable members, that if you want to speak English, you should be on the English channel. If you want to speak French, you should be on the French channel. And should you wish to alternate between the two languages, as I just did, you should change the channel to the language that you are speaking each time you switch languages. In addition, please direct your remarks through the chair and speak slowly and clearly at all times to help our interpreters. Finally, we strongly recommend that you use the headset for members who will be speaking. And again, I recommend the headset for your fellow members, but also for the interpreters as it gets loud up and down and it squeaks. So it really does make it difficult for them if you do not have the prescribed headsets. We'll go on to ministerial announcements, and I understand that there are no ministerial announcements today. So we'll go on to presenting petitions. We'll now proceed to presenting petitions for a period not exceeding 15 minutes. J'aimerais rappeler aux députés que les
I would remind members that any petition presented during a meeting of the special committee must have already been certified by the clerk of petitions. If there is time remaining, no. So we'll continue on with the petitions.
Faut que je change de langue.
I have to change language.
Go to Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week was World Maternal Mental Health Day, and today I'd like to take a moment to present a very important petition on behalf of the Canadian Perinatal Mental Health Collaborative. Whereas perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are the most common obstetrical complication, and whereas in Canada and worldwide, 20% of women and 10% of men suffer from a perinatal mental illness, resulting in an annual economic cost to Canada of approximately $11 billion. And whereas the UK, Australia, and parts of the US have perinatal mental health strategies and screening guidelines in place, and Canada does not, the Canadian Perinatal Mental Health Collaborative is calling upon the House of Commons in Parliament assembled to create a national perinatal mental health strategy that will provide direction, policy, and funding to develop a specialized, comprehensive perinatal mental health care services, which include universal screening and timely access to treatment for all women and men during pregnancy and the postpartum period.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to Mr. Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My petition relates to cystic fibrosis. If we were in the House now, this is May is Cystic Fibrosis Month. One of the days this month, we would all be wearing yellow roses in sympathy with and solidarity with those who suffer from what is the #1 disease killer in Canada of young people. The petitioners have asked us to look at the situation with the Patent Medicine Prices Review Board, which is scheduled to go through some important and potentially detrimental regulatory changes very soon. And they ask for the following things. #1, that the amendments to the Patent Medicine Prices Review Board be rescinded, as these will restrict Canadians from receiving life-saving medications for cystic fibrosis and other illnesses, but in particular, a medicine called Trikafta, which can have the effect of treating cystic fibrosis in the case of 90% of cystic fibrosis sufferers, to work with the provinces to find a strategy to jointly allow for the delivery of this medicine, to this life-saving medicine, to Canadians across the country, and to take a leadership role in negotiating a price for gene modulators throughout all of the provinces of Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll now go on to Ms. May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to take the mic today with all colleagues. Good to see you all virtually and safe. Petitioners in my community are pointing out in this petition that and this is one, of course, that predates the pandemic, that the family doctor shortage is severe in this country, that nearly 5 million Canadians lack a regular family doctor, and that this problem is particularly profound in more rural areas. So areas such as the community, the petitioners reference the community in which I live, Sydney, British Columbia, that we actually have a very significant crisis and a lack of family doctors. They call on the government, the House assembled, to work with provinces and territories to find a collaborative, holistic solution so that every Canadian has a family doctor and we address the family doctor shortage.
We'll now go on to Mr. Viss.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm presenting a timely petition today which emphasizes the concerns constituents in my riding of Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon have with the Liberal government's inherently flawed and undemocratic approach to firearms legislation and regulation. The petitioners call upon the Government of Canada to stop targeting law-abiding firearms owners, to cancel all plans to confiscate firearms legally owned by federally licensed RCMP vetted Canadians, and to focus taxpayer dollars where they will actually increase public safety, which is on keeping at-risk youth from being involved in gangs, on anti-gang enforcement, and providing our men and women in uniform at the Canada Border Services Agency with the resources they need to stop the flow of illegal guns into our country. Through this petition, Mr. Chair, my constituents take issue with how the Liberal government continues to target law-abiding firearms owners instead of the gangs, drug traffickers, and illegal weapon smugglers responsible for the violence in our communities. They note that the use of the phrase military-style assault rifle is purely political posturing, as the term is undefined in Canadian law. They also draw attention to the numerous inaccuracies about current firearms legislation and regulation.
I'd like to remind the honourable members that this is a concise précis of what the petition says, not a speech. I'll let Mr. Viss continue. I'm sure he'll be very brief in wrapping up.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's sufficient.
Okay. Now we'll go on to Mr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a huge honor to table e-petition 2512, which was signed by 1,198 petitioners, primarily from the province of Nova Scotia, where the province of Nova Scotia had invited multinational companies to scope out and develop expansive open net salmon farming operations. And the petitioners cite that the expansion would increase environmental degradation as seen in similar aquaculture companies that they've had a part in British Columbia, Newfoundland, Norway, Vietnam, and elsewhere in the world. It also, they cite, will pose risk to native fish stocks, pollute coastal ecosystems, imperil at-risk wild Atlantic salmon, and threaten established fisheries and tourism operations. And they also raise concerns that open net fish farming will create significant employment and will not create significant employment, will undermine existing lobster and other fisheries. Mr. Speaker, they're calling on the government to uphold Bill C-68 and the species at risk legislation and protect our oceans, and ban expansion of open net finfish aquaculture in our oceans, and work to phase out any existing open net fish farm operations currently in place. And lastly, invest in land-based closed containment finfish aquaculture. I want to thank these petitioners for fighting for clean oceans and for their local economy and for the well-being of Nova Scotia. Thank you.
We'll now go on to Mr. Manley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a petition that was signed and sent in by members of my riding in Nanaimo Ladysmith, and it calls upon the House of Commons to commit to upholding the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada calls to action by immediately halting all existing and planned construction of the Coastal GasLink project on Wet'suwet'en territory, order the RCMP to dismantle their exclusion zone and stand down, schedule nation-to-nation talks between Wet'suwet'en Nation and the federal and provincial government, something that's already happened, thankfully, and prioritize the real implementation of the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Thank you.
And now we'll go to Ms. Ratanzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the pleasure of presenting a petition on behalf of my constituents of Don Valley East. They are asking that the Government of Canada not provide any financial assistance to Canadian Airlines until they promptly provide full refunds of the cancelled flights due to COVID-19. And they are asking the same for any foreign airlines to, within, and from Canada, because they feel that these Canadians are facing economic hardship themselves and need a refund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll now proceed to questioning of ministers. The first question will go to Mr. Albus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we've learned that federal workers have been ordered to ignore obvious signs of fraud when it comes to applying for government benefits. Can the Prime Minister confirm that 200,000 applications have been flagged as potentially fraudulent?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our focus from the very beginning has been to get the help out
Prime
to
Minister
Canadians. Oh, I think I'm off mute. No, can you hear me?
We're good now. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our priority from the very beginning has been to make sure that Canadians get the support they need. We moved very quickly to get the Canada Emergency Response Benefit out, to get the wage subsidy out, to help Canadians in this unprecedented situation. We recognize that there will be challenges, and we're going to work through those challenges. But our priority every step of the way was to make sure we helped as many Canadians as possible.
We'll go back quickly to Mr. Albus now.
Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm that the instruction has been given to federal employees to ignore these 200,000 applications as being flagged as potentially fraudulent? This is important.
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Our focus has been on helping as many people as we possibly can. Our decision from the very beginning was get the help out to people and figure out with retroactive action, if necessary, where and when there has been or there may have been fraudulent use.
Now
our priority was getting that help out.
The next question.
Mr. Speaker, this came from a memo issued by a deputy minister. Did the minister's office or the Prime Minister sign off on this memo?
The right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, in this unprecedented situation, our focus has been on helping as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. Other people, other parties might have made a different choice had they been in government, but our focus was getting help out to people when they needed it as quickly as possible and cleaning it up afterwards.
Mr. Speaker, I asked a very simple question. Did the Prime Minister or his minister sign off on this memo that was issued by the Deputy Minister? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have been focused entirely on getting help out to Canadians when they need it. And that has meant that, yes, there will be things we need to clean up after the fact and work to fix. But getting that help into Canadians' pockets during this pandemic was our priority.
We'll go back to Mr. Albus now.
I'm asking the Prime Minister to show some accountability. Did he or his office sign off on this memo?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my office and I have been absolutely focused on getting the help to Canadians that was necessary. Perhaps, as Mr. Albus points out, other parties would have been slower to get the money out. We were flowing money to people who needed it.
Mr. Speaker, the question was quite simple, and obviously the Prime Minister doesn't seem comfortable with the answer. Will he at least then commit to investigating every individual case of fraud, or will he write it off as the story is said?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in this unprecedented situation, Canadians have lost their jobs, Canadians have lost their paychecks, don't know how they're going to be able to support their loved ones and pay for their groceries. We made a decision as a country that we would be there for them, and that has been and will continue to be our priority.
Back to Mr. Albus.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister can leave the cottage talk for the cottage. We're asking a very simple question here. Will he commit as a government to enforce the rule of law and to enforce the attestation that says that if someone commits fraud, that it will be followed up and pursued?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
My commitment as Prime Minister and as a government is to support Canadians, is to protect them. And that is what we are doing by giving them the support they need through this unprecedented situation. Perhaps other parties don't think it's as important to support Canadians. We will keep focused on supporting Canadians.
That's not what I'm asking here, Mr. Speaker. Conservatives supported the legislation that allowed those supports to go through. What we are asking about is fraud. All along, we've been told fraud will be detected through audits after the fact and expect that to happen. Can the Prime Minister at least confirm that this will happen?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
When we made the determination that we needed to move quickly to help Canadians, we knew that there would be a need to clean up after the fact, to go after fraudulent cases, and we will do that. But our priority now and in the coming months is to ensure Canadians get the support they need and our economy comes roaring back. That's what we're focused on.
Nous allons continuer maintenant. Attends une minute, on va changer de langue.
We will now be continuing with Mr. Sainte-Marie. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced large employers' emergency financing facility. Great. Even better, he announced that these loans were conditional. One of the conditions forces companies to not be guilty of tax evasion or avoidance using tax havens. Wow. Unfortunately, I was quickly disillusioned. It's rather abusive tax evasion or avoidance that we're talking about, so fraudsters, but nothing to put pressures on profiteers, businesses that take advantage of tax havens to avoid paying their taxes, but who do so legally will still have access to this emergency credit. Why is the Prime Minister continuing to support profiteers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We will always be here to fight against tax evasion, and that has always been a priority of the Liberal government. But our priority in this situation is employees, workers across the country who may lose their jobs, who have lost their jobs. That is why we are moving forward with measures to support workers, and that will continue to be our priority. Mr. Sainte-Marie. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When I hear the Prime Minister say no tolerance for tax avoidance, I am thrilled, or tax evasion. But unfortunately, that's not the reality on the ground. Tax avoidance is the legal use of tax strategies. All 5 major banks take advantage of it. Big corporations and multinationals take advantage of it. We have to fight back against these companies. They have to do their part. Can the Prime Minister and the government act to make illegal what is immoral? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we announced the Large Employers Emergency Financing Facility, we said that those who wish to reserve the taxpayers' money under these exceptional circumstances have to have contributed by paying their fair share of taxes. That is why we are putting in place measures that look closely at the tax structures of these companies before lending money to them. Mr. Sainte-Marie. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When a bank moves its most profitable activities elsewhere in Canada, they're in Canada, but they're registered in the Bahamas or Barbados or another tax haven, do they consider that that company is doing its fair share and paying taxes in Canada? Thank you, Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be assessing on a case-by-case basis the applications for the Large Employers Emergency Financing Facility. We do not expect the major banks to access these funds, but we will ensure that whoever does apply for these funds is transparent with the way that they are managing their money, including their international operations, before we lend them money. Mr. Sainte-Marie, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, consumers are paying more and more with their credit cards. That allows them to do contactless payments in businesses and to purchase more products online, which is very profitable for Visa and MasterCard, who charge unbelievably high fees, almost 10 times what people pay in Europe and in Australia. It's costing our retailers a fortune. Can the Prime Minister do the same thing as was done in Europe and Australia and limit the interchange fees to 0.3%? Thank you. Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are always seeking to reduce costs for consumers. We are working with the financial institutions and the major banks to find help and provide access to people who need it. We're always looking at ways to lower costs for consumers, but right now we are sending money to consumers who need it the most across the country to get through this crisis, and that is what we shall continue to have as a priority. Mr. Sainte-Marie. Yes, the question wasn't about consumers, but about retailers. A credit card that charges 2.5–3% per transaction lowers profit margins and enriches our credit card companies to the detriment of our retailers. I invite our prime ministers to be inspired by practices employed in Europe and Australia and limit the interchange fees to 0.3%. Right, Honourable Prime Minister. We are continuing to work with the major banks and credit card companies to help consumers during these exceptional and difficult circumstances. Of course, there are things that we'll be able to look at in the longer term as well. Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Instead of providing a universal direct payment for all, the government has decided to implement a complicated program that leaves many people behind. A single parent with 4 school-aged children lost their spousal and child support due to COVID-19. She pays taxes on her spousal income, but she's not eligible for CERB. The Minister of Employment says she's looking into this gap. It has been more than weeks, still no action. Will the Prime Minister step in and fix this gap so that the single parents and their children can get the support they need during this pandemic?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, to correct the honourable member to point out that we actually moved in the most rapid and simplest possible way in providing income replacement to millions upon millions of Canadians who needed it with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. However, as the member points out, when one moves quickly and efficiently, there will be gaps, and that's why we've been working diligently to try and fill those gaps. We want to make sure that Canadians who need help get it.
Ms. Kwan.
Well, the Minister of Employment has been aware of this for 3 weeks. She says she was looking into it and still there's no action. The truth of the matter is single parents and their children depending on spousal support and child maintenance are not getting support. Will the Prime Minister fix this gap?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We recognize the particular challenge faced by families, by single parents, by families with young children, which is why we increased the amount of the Canada Child Benefit to be able to support people in this particular moment. On top of that, we have looked to fill further gaps that have existed with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. Well over 7 million Canadians have access to the CERB. We will continue to work with them.
That does not replace spousal and child maintenance, Prime Minister. Across the country, there is no national standard to address the homelessness crisis amidst the pandemic, leaving communities at heightened risk for COVID-19. Canadians who are homeless or living in substandard housing have no access to bathroom facilities for basic hygiene. Those living in crowded SROs and shelters cannot practice social distancing. The problem is particularly acute in my riding in the downtown east side. While the BC government has implemented an initiative to house some of the homeless population in empty hotels in the short term, support from the federal government is needed to secure permanent solutions post-COVID-19. Will the Prime Minister commit to providing matching funds and take the right to adequate housing seriously?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I know the honourable member wouldn't want to have inadvertently misled the House. The fact is, the federal government almost immediately sent significant hundreds of millions of dollars of resources to shelters across the country to enable them to create facilities, including renting new spaces, to be able to house people who are homeless without increasing the danger of the spread of COVID-19. I recognize there's always more to do, but as we demonstrated with our national housing strategy, we are serious about fighting homelessness and supporting vulnerable Canadians, and we will continue to.
Ms. Kwan.
The Prime Minister must know that the money that the federal government sent is deficient. Many people still remain homeless and they are at risk. Cutting chronic homelessness by 50% over the next decade is not good enough. And that is this Prime Minister's national housing strategy. Will the government stop just making empty promises and ensure every Canadian has the right to housing? And will he top up the support for
provinces to at least matching their funds?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, cutting chronic homelessness by 50% is an ambitious goal that no one else has ever been able to do as a government, and we are well on track for it. And I would suggest that the member opposite not dismiss that as empty promises, because we have demonstrated the actions on it. But I recognize there is more to do. There is always more to do. And we will be there, continue to be there for vulnerable people, including homeless Canadians.
Well,
Ms. Kwan.
I would remind the Prime Minister it was the federal Liberals who actually eliminated the National Affordable Housing Program in 1993. And so we have this homeless crisis today as a result of the Liberals. We in Vancouver East have the third largest urban Indigenous population in the country, yet we got less than 2% of the pandemic urban Indigenous housing funding. They're overrepresented amongst the homeless population. Why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize there is more to do on supporting urban Indigenous peoples. We have moved forward both through the Minister of Indigenous Services and the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relationship to address the challenges facing urban Aboriginal populations. We will continue to work with them to recognize that these are amongst the most vulnerable people in Canada who deserve the right support from all orders of government, and we will be there to support them increasingly over the coming years.
Ms. Bergen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm hearing in my riding of Portage-Lisgar that individuals who are dealing with Service Canada through the mail are experiencing delays, and it seems that the mail that's going to Service Canada is not being opened. In fact, one of my constituents sent documents, including a doctor's note 2 months ago on March 12th, and is being told now she must resend those documents because they've never been opened. Can the government tell us, is this a widespread problem, and how are they dealing with unopened mail that's happening at Service Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the honourable member that we are doing everything that we can in Service Canada to meet the expectations of Canadians. In the context of COVID-19 pandemic, we've had unprecedented volumes, but we have redeployed thousands of staff to frontline services by phone and by other means. We had to close a number of the centres because of COVID-19 concerns and the safety and well-being of Canadians.
Ms. Bergen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So is the minister aware, is this a widespread problem? Is this happening rarely or frequently? I'm hearing about it. I know for many MPs, we are at the front lines of dealing and helping with constituents who are not only wanting to get support, but are also trying to get programs unrelated to COVID-19. Is unopened mail a widespread problem at Service Canada?
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to look into the particular case that the honourable member brings up. I am not aware of unopened mail to be a widespread issue. In this particular case, I'm happy to work with the honourable member to see what happened in this individual case.
Ms. Bergen.
Thanks very much. Mr. Speaker, the Ivor Johnson single-shot rifle is a standard farm gun used by many farmers in my riding, in fact, passed down from generation to generation in some cases. Why are the Liberals making this gun illegal? What's the purpose of banning this particular farm rifle?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I just wish to advise the member that we work very closely with the Canadian Firearms Program and with law enforcement and with firearm verification to identify the makes, models, and variants of 9 rifles, all of whom had in their earliest provenance a design for military use, for soldiers to use in combat. And those are the weapons that have been...
We'll now go back to Ms. Bergen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I would challenge the minister on that. I do not believe that he has been consulting with frontline officers. We're hearing from frontline officers that they are concerned about gangs, about drug dealers, and about illegal weapons being smuggled across the border. They are not concerned with these types of farm rifles that are being used by our farmers and in some cases hunters. These are specifically used for hunting. So, Mr. Speaker, we'd like to see the evidence on why the Liberals are once again targeting law-abiding Canadians, ignoring gangsters and drug dealers, and why are they banning the Ivor Johnson.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great opportunity, I think, when the member opposite says what the police are saying. Let's hear what the police are saying. The Canadian Association of Police Chiefs of Police declared that military assault rifles were produced for the sole purpose of killing people in large numbers, and they urged the government to enact legislation to ban all military assault rifles except for law enforcement and military purposes. The Ontario police leaders said that they support a prohibition on all military designed rifles, and in our view, they said, these weapons have no place in our communities and should be reserved for use by Canada's military and law enforcement.
Yes. Ms. Bergen, we have about 50 seconds left.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've seen this before, where the Liberals introduced a long gun registry that cost billions of dollars and did absolutely nothing to stop violent crimes. So this is a repeat of what the Liberals have done before. Is the minister saying that the Ivor Johnson that farmers use is an assault rifle?
The Honourable Minister.
Actually, what I'm saying and what our regulations say very clearly is weapons that were designed not for hunting and not for sport purposes, but were designed for soldiers to use in combat to kill other soldiers have no place in Canadian society. And I would also advise the member that any Canadian killed by gun violence is one too many. And we have seen far too many tragedies where these types of weapons have been used to kill Canadians.
Nous allons maintenant continuer avec...
We'll now continue with Mr. Reyes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is to the Prime Minister. Is it true to say that those employees who deal with the CRB have to indicate that they will be indicating that there are fraud activities taking place as established in the news today? Answer. We would like to say that this is a very difficult period for Canadians, and we're going to support them to help them pay for their groceries and their rent. And I'm very proud of the people who are working at the CRA. Mr. Reyes, I'm asking a question that's very simple. Has the CRA sent to the employees at CRA to ignore fraud and to send them, nevertheless, CRB benefits? The Minister. Mr. Chair, as I was going to say, it's more than 6.8 million Canadians who have made an application in order to receive the CRB. And so this is to allow Canadians to pay their rent and their groceries. Question. Is it true that they've sent a note to the CRA employees that they should ignore people who might have frauded the system? The Honourable Minister. The answer is no. Mr. Reyes. Mr. Chair, it is now 7 weeks since the CRB has been implemented. And my question is to the Minister. The government site says that if the employee has to go back to work, then he must reimburse the CRB. And so can the Minister say whether the employee has to reimburse $2,000 or $500 per each week that he has worked? The Honourable Minister. We believe that this is a very difficult period for Canadians, and this is a time where we have to support Canadians and help people to pay their groceries, to pay their rent. And this is what we committed ourselves to and what the government has committed to doing, and this is what we will continue to do. Mr. Reyes, the question that I was asking is coming from businesses and workers, and it's a very simple question that I'm asking. And so when we are calling for technical information to the CRA, we want to be able to transfer that information to the population. So my question is, if an employee is called back to work and has to reimburse a part of the CRB, does that employee have to reimburse $500 per week of the weeks that he or she is going to work, or does that person have to reimburse the $2,000 in total? This is of interest to the employers and employees who want access to the CRB. So the question is, do they have to reimburse $500 or $2,000? The Honourable Minister.
Service Canada will work closely with anybody who transitions either from the CERB to the wage subsidy or from the CERB back to employment to ensure that there's no overpayment, but of course that there's no undue hardship on the individual.
Monsieur Reyes.
Mr. Reyes, look, Mr. Chair, it's been 7 weeks since this announcement was made, and employees want to know what they need to reimburse, and the employers have to know what they're dealing with in terms of the wage subsidy. So are they required to reimburse the $500 per week or $2,000 in total based on the numbers of weeks they've worked? It's not very complicated. The Honourable Minister.
The individual circumstances of the particular worker, and that's why Service Canada is reaching out to individuals to make it as seamless as possible for them. I can assure the member that nobody will be put in a difficult situation. I recognize that there's some uncertainty, but we're trying to address that. Thank you.
Monsieur Reyes.
Mr. Reyes, there's 35 seconds left. I can't believe the answers that we're getting today. It's inadmissible in my view. So can employees refuse to go back to work if the health conditions are respected by the employer and then also continue to receive the CRB? It's very simple. If the health conditions are respected, can the employee refuse to go back to work? The Honourable Minister.
I apologize, Mr. Speaker, had myself on mute. Mr. Speaker, I can assure all Canadians that at the same time as employees have a right to refuse work and employers have an obligation to ensure healthy and safe workplaces, we want all people to be able to go back to work and feel safe. There are established processes in federal and provincial labor processes for refusal to work. And at the end of the day, the CERB is there for workers who aren't working due to COVID reasons.
To go on from here. The next question will come from Mr. Smale.
Thank you, Speaker. The Wet'suwet'en elected chiefs and community members have been excluded from negotiations on a memorandum of understanding affecting land rights and titles. Only a few hereditary chiefs have been part of these secret negotiations. The elected chiefs have issued a press release asking for the government to halt the joint announcement scheduled for May 14th on the MOU until the community has had a chance to look at and understand how the MOU will affect them. Will the minister agree with the democratically elected chiefs and the Wet'suwet'en people that they represent and delay any announcements until proper consultation can be completed?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you for the question, and I want to reassure the member that communication is ongoing with and between our partners on how to go forward on implementing the Wet'suwet'en rights and title with a Wet'suwet'en-led solution. We encourage the leadership to continue their ongoing and necessary and important conversations with their community on how they want to proceed on a path towards implementing their rights and title. As we work to rebuild Canada's relationship with the Wet'suwet'en, we need to give them space for these important discussions.
So, Minister, is that a yes, that the signing will be delayed until the elected chiefs have a chance to look at the agreement?
Thank you. It is, as I believe the elected chiefs have had a look at the agreement, and that these are very difficult conversations on complex issues around rights and title. This has been outstanding for a long time.
Mr. Smale again. Mr. Smale.
Thank you, Speaker. The current health crisis should not be used as an opportunity to sideline the Wet'suwet'en people and their elected chiefs. The federal government should be bringing the community together rather than actively excluding Wet'suwet'en members. The chiefs are so concerned that they are now calling for the resignation of the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations for failure to engage in proper consultations, which has stoked divisions within the community. Will the minister reconsider and put in place a consultation process that honors both their traditional house system and the governance responsibilities of elected chiefs and councils?
The Honourable Minister.
Yet again, I think it's very important that the member understand that the engagement must take place and be led by the Wet'suwet'en Nation. That means the hereditary chiefs and the elected chiefs need to work with all clan members as they determine how they wish to work with Canada and the province of British Columbia to implement the rights and title of the Wet'suwet'en people.
Mr. Smale.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Minister. I agree that the Wet'suwet'en should have the opportunity to look at the proposed agreement, but yet we are still seeing news coming out of the elected chiefs and the people they represent that they have not had a thorough chance to look at this proposed agreement. So will the minister delay the signing?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I think that the member will agree that that there's a lot more work to do with all of the parties, but I do believe that in terms of the kind of engagement that has taken place in the feast houses, the kind of notification that took place even before the COVID-19, that work is underway, and it will have to be Wet'suwet'en led in terms of what eventually will be their choice as to how to implement their rights and title.
Speaker, for 2 weeks now, the Liberals on the Indigenous Affairs Committee have shut down Conservatives and Witnesses every time we mention the word Wet'suwet'en. They don't want to talk about the issue, an issue that is very much aggravated by the COVID-19 crisis. The Liberals profess to be the advocates for Indigenous communities and the champions of reconciliation. Can the minister tell us why then are the Liberals determined to shut down discussion and public debate?
The Honourable Minister.
I would have to disagree with the member that I don't believe that there's at any time an interest in shutting down discussion or debate. I think, though, that at the COVID committee, that the issues facing Indigenous communities, First Nations, Inuit, Métis around COVID-19 are very, very important to them, and that we need to work with them to make sure that they can keep their communities safe.
Mr. Schmale, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Speaker. I would argue with the minister and challenge her to talk to her committee members. Each time Conservatives have brought up the topic of Wet'suwet'en and the situation happening with the elected chiefs and the people they represent, we have been shut down every single time. So when will the minister allow the public debate to happen?
I think that, again, in a committee, that it is the work of the committee, is the decision of the committee, and I believe that the chair and all members want the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis be able to keep their community safe during this COVID-19.
The next question goes to Ms. Kuzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been 3 months since this pandemic started, and the Liberals just got around to announcing help for our seniors. Seniors are a priority and should be treated as such. Why do the Liberals treat seniors as an afterthought?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. There is definitely an interest and support for our seniors. We've been working to support seniors since the very beginning of this pandemic, and I've just recently had the opportunity to introduce additional measures today where we are introducing a one-time special payment for those that receive
Mrs.
OAS.
Kuzi again, please.
Nearly 2 months into living in some form of isolation, watching retirement savings take a hit, and having to take additional health precautions due to the COVID-19 pandemic, eligible seniors are set to receive a one-time payment of up to $500. Why does this government consistently undervalue seniors compared to everyone else?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much for the question. And I just want to make sure that that my honourable colleague remembers that we have already given a GST top-up of almost 375 for single seniors, and again almost over 500 for couples. And so this is in addition to what we've just done today, where, as you said, $500.
Mrs. Kuzi.
Selon avec cette data, 69%.
69% of Canadians are worried about a second wave of the pandemic, and 50% of Canadians feel that there's a lack of PPE. Keeping in mind these surprising numbers, what is the government's plan to provide sufficient PPE in case of a second wave of the pandemic? The Honourable Minister.
Our government is aggressively buying life-saving equipment and supplies that Canada needs from a diverse range of suppliers around the world and here at home. We're working directly with businesses across the country to rapidly scale up domestic production capacity to meet current and future needs. At this point, our primary focus is on frontline healthcare professionals, but we are also exploring federal government assistance in areas of essential services so that PPE exists where workers need that. We are following public health guidance on this issue, looking to see where we can best assist.
Nous allons maintenant continuer avec Madame.
We will now move on to Ms. Kuzi.
Despite 1.8 billion units of PPE having been procured, less than 6% of N95 respirators have been filled, less than 8% of surgical masks have been filled, and just 1.4% of face shields have been filled. We know orders are not deliveries, so what's the delay?
The Honourable Minister.
Let me start off by saying that we are working in an incredibly difficult and competitive global environment, and we are procuring millions of items, face shields, gowns, hand sanitizer, N95 surgical mask, ventilators, every single day. There is a delay in the production of these goods, but we have had many deliveries coming into Canada, over 2 million face shields.
Ms. Kuzi.
For example,
a national security expert from the University of Ottawa has said that the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile has failed in the current crisis, resulting in some provinces such as Saskatchewan using expired PPE and provinces such as Alberta using faulty PPE that cause rashes and headaches. What is the government doing to expedite procurement and to counter the risk of faulty PPE, given that 34 of the suppliers are from China that has already supplied significant faulty PPE?
The Honourable Minister.
I will start off by saying that we have multiple supply chains operating at the same time from China, domestically, from the United States, and countries along the world. Our first priority is to make sure we get safe, effective equipment and supplies into the hands of our frontline healthcare workers. Given the global supply chains and the competitive nature, this is an ongoing project, and we are making success for our frontline healthcare workers.
We'll now go on to the next question for Mr. d'Entremont.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. 10 weeks ago, the Minister of Fisheries, responding to my question in QP, acknowledged that the lobster fishery was being negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, that it was facing losses of up to 95% of their Asian markets. Mr. Speaker, on April 28th, I asked the Minister what she was doing to support harvesters that were left out of the $62.5 million aid package. She mentioned that she was looking at sector-specific areas to make sure that the issues were addressed. Can the Minister tell us what the government's plan is to directly support seafood harvesters?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for the question. It's a very good one. We know that the seafood sector, the fish and seafood sector, have been extremely adversely affected because of COVID-19. We've started to put measures in place to address the issue with our $62.5 million for the processors, as well as to make sure the CERB is available for seasonal workers, as well as people who have run out of their fisheries EI. But we know that more needs to be done. The fishery enterprises are uniquely structured. That's why we're looking at measures to address the concerns they have. I'm working with my provincial as well as my caucus colleagues.
We'll go back to Mr. d'Entremont now.
Mr. Speaker, most fishermen are not eligible for the wage subsidy program due to the stipulation that it cannot be used for employees who are related to their employer. Most fishing enterprises, like farm enterprises, are family-oriented. Many fishermen have their wives, their sons, their uncles, their fathers working for them, and sometimes it's the whole family working on the boat. Can the minister explain what the government's plan is to support fishermen that do not fit into any actual program and desperately need direct financial help from the federal government to survive?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we know that because of the unique structure of fishing enterprises, that they are not eligible for many of the supports we have put in place. We have made changes to the CERB to make sure that people who have run out of their fisheries EI are eligible, as well as seasonal workers, but we know that more needs to be done for the harvesters directly. We are working on direct supports. We have put in place measures to address processors' concerns so that harvesters continue to have a place to sell their product, but we know that more has to be done. I am working with my cabinet colleagues to find solutions, and I hope I will have more to say about that very soon.
Mr. d'Entremont.
In recent weeks, lobster fishermen in the Gulf region of the Maritimes were shocked to read an additional subsection of regulations added to their fishing conditions for the 2021 fishing season. This addition was for a catch limitation or quota to which none of the harvesters or advisory members were privy to. It's created quite a chill within the lobster fishery for sure. Can the minister tell us how these detailed regulations managed to get added without her authorization? And can license holders expect to see these same regulations in their conditions when their season gets going in the future?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the people who brought to my attention the conditions that were put on license in the Gulf. Those were not done under my authorization. They were removed right away from the conditions of license, and it will not happen. Thank you.
Mr. d'Entremont.
My next question is to the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, February 26th, after the death of 23-year-old Chantal Lindsay from Nova Scotia due to complications with cystic fibrosis, I asked the Prime Minister whether the government was going to make Trikafta that might have saved Chantal's life available to Canadians. Now that almost 12 weeks have passed, we understand that Vertex Pharmaceuticals has not yet applied to Health Canada for study. Many of my Conservative colleagues and I have recently sent a letter to the Minister asking for an update of how we support those negotiations with Vertex. Can the Minister of Health tell us when this drug will be available to CF patients in Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My heart goes out to the family of Chantal, who are obviously suffering an unbearable loss. I agree with the member that we want to make sure that effective drugs are available in Canada. As the member has pointed out, the Vertex has not applied to sell Trikafta in Canada. However, there is the special access program that makes drugs like Trikafta available. And in fact, of the majority of people who have applied through the special access program to get access to the drug, they have received access. So I would encourage the member to continue his correspondence with the manufacturer as we will. Thank you.
Mr. d'Entremont, you have 36 seconds.
Mr. President.
Mr. Chair, tourism season is already deeply affected by COVID. Several industries, businesses, and festivals are facing dramatic loss of revenues. In my writing, tens of thousands of tourists use the ferry between Bar Harbor, Maine and Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. What is the government planning to help them so they can survive and reopen next season if the borders remain closed? The Honourable Minister, in 15 seconds or less, please. Yes, thank you. I'm happy to discuss solutions to help people in the tourism sector with my colleague, Mr. d'Entremont, across the whole country, especially in the Atlantic region, and in the new funding of context. I'll be happy to continue to discuss and work with him and my other Atlantic colleagues. Thank you. Next question, Mr. Savard-Tremblay. You have... Can you hear me now? Yes, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A crisis such as the one we're currently undergoing can, despite all the drama it causes, offer opportunities towards a transition. During a crisis, what is essential may become urgent. Things that are normally essential may become urgent, and what is unfair may become scandalous during such crises. In Quebec, we tend to be allergic to injustice and flagrant inequality. Yesterday, Ottawa announced major support for large businesses. In Quebec, many of us think that when a business knocks on the state door to ask for help, that state, and it's totally legitimate to do so, can impose conditions before offering this help. The Bloc Québécois believes that support offered to large businesses should be conditional upon a certain limit in order to avoid abusive practices in the compensation of executives. This is a position that's strongly supported in Quebec. After the Bombardier episode, and I won't go on about that, but Quebecers know all about it, 3 out of 4 parties who continue to sit in our National Assembly embrace that position. Many civil society groups also share that view. In the United States, and you'll agree with me that it's hardly a socialist fortress, have already set up such policies when offering such loans. Yes, we will support you with certain conditions. According to the Alternative Policy Center's report published on January 2nd of this year, the 100 best paid executives in Canada were paid 200 times what their workers were making in 2018. The average salary of workers went up by 2.6% between 2017 and 2018. And let's take into account the fact that inflation is 2.3% in that period, so there was no real increase, as compared to 18% for their bosses during the same period, even in cases where businesses were incurring losses. So, and let's specify that wasn't during a crisis. Imagine what's taking place today. That study didn't take place during a crisis. So now we're talking about a huge gap, a huge divide. Nothing is trickling down from the top of the pyramid. Is the government planning on imposing a limit on executive compensation so that not just bosses benefit from these measures? It's a clear question. I'm asking you please to provide us with a clear answer. Otherwise, I'll ask for a new Clarity Act. The Honourable Ministers. I'd also like to remind the Honourable Members to speak through the Chair. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We know that it is necessary to have an approach that will help businesses, both small and medium-sized businesses as well as large ones, to bridge this period until the end of the crisis. This is very important in our opinion. It will help Canadians protect their jobs, and it will also protect our economy for the future. That is why our approach, the large employer emergency credit, is so important. But there must be conditions, that is true, to ensure that our credit is available, but that it is available for those companies that will continue to help our economy and continue to protect their employees and continue to be good participants in our community. That's why we consider this approach with certain conditions imposed. We will be providing further details in the coming days, but what I can tell you for now is that we decided it is necessary to have conditions when it comes to executive compensation. That is a very important aspect indeed. It means that we will consider the regulations and conditions and rules necessary to ensure that credit will be offered to companies who will give it to the employees. That's very important. Now, there will be other important conditions. For example, that credit must be used for operations, not for dividends or shareholder buybacks, for example. That's very important as well. And we will be imposing such conditions. But of course, on top of that, we want to ensure that these companies are in a good position. Not a company that is practicing tax evasion, for example.
Oh, Ms. Groh, I believe you're muted. I believe we're having technical difficulties. If you check, you're still on mute.
How's that?
There we go. Perfect.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity. I will be sharing my time with the member from King Hants. Mr. Speaker, Canadian seniors are worried about COVID-19. In my own riding of Humber River Black Creek, 30% of the population are 65 or older. We know that they are one of the highest risk populations. During this time, their costs have gone up. They've had to spend extra on medication and grocery delivery, as many cannot leave their homes. I have also heard of many seniors being faced with extra dispensing fees. These costs all add up, and many seniors were already carefully budgeting before the pandemic. It is so important that our government be there to support them. Can the minister please tell us what our government is doing to ensure that vulnerable seniors get the support they need during this very difficult time?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much to my colleague from Humber River Black Creek for the question. She's right. Seniors have faced increased costs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our government today has responded to that with additional action. We announced a one-time tax-free payment of $300 for seniors eligible for OAS and an additional $200 for seniors eligible for GIS. This means up to $500 for the most vulnerable seniors to help them with their financial security and help them get through this challenging time. Beyond this, we announced $20 million to expand the New Horizons for Seniors program to kickstart initiatives and services that will help seniors, for example, get grocery deliveries right to their door and stay connected. We've worked tirelessly on this with other recent measures like the GST credit to help the most vulnerable seniors. Thank you to my colleague again for her question and her advocacy.
With 30 seconds left, Ms. Scrow, just go ahead, a short question and response. No, just activate your microphone there, Judy.
I've got to
go ahead.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I want to applaud the Minister for that work. I know she's been working extremely hard to try to make sure that we get some additional announcements over and above all of the ones we already announced. So congratulations. Keep up the work. You know there's lots more we want to do.
Thank you. Response. Go ahead.
Thank you very much to my honourable colleague for her advocacy, for everyone's advocacy. It's been, and seniors across the country have been communicating with us, letting us know their needs, and we've been responding. Thank you very much.
Now we'll go over to Mr. Blois. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always a privilege to be able to have the chance to speak on issues that matter to Canadians, whether or not it's from the floor of the House of Commons or indeed from my house here in Nova Scotia. And it's great to see everyone across the country. And so I'd like, similar to other colleagues, to thank the staff of the House of Commons for their continued work to make sure that we have this forum to be able to continue the democratic process. I would also just like to quickly thank my staff, both here locally in Kings Hants in Ottawa, for their continued work for my constituents. Mr. Chair, my question through you is to the Minister of Agriculture. In Kings Hants, agriculture is an important economic driver for our economy. We have the greatest concentration of agricultural producers east of Montreal, and whether or not it's our beef industry to our wine industry and everything in between, it is extremely important. We have the Canfor Research and Development Center and the Hants County Agricultural Exhibition, which is the longest standing exhibition in North America. So we know that COVID-19 has had impacts on the agriculture industry to differing degrees. Particularly, Kings Hants is home to an important dairy sector, and we also have a growing and important horticultural sector. Can the minister specifically provide an update to this House on the measures our government has taken on those two particular commodity groups that are so important in my riding?
The Honourable Minister, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague, the MP for Kings Hants. We are targeting support to some of the most critical challenges facing the food supply chain. And last Tuesday, I was proud to announce our emergency processing fund for a total of $77.5 million. $50 million for the surplus food program, $125 million through the agri-recovery to support our beef and pork producers. Concerning the dairy sectors in particular, I'm hopeful that tomorrow we will get the support of all the parties to be able to respond to their request to increase their demand for an increase in their loan capacity from $300 to $500 million. And I would like to encourage all farmers to apply to the business risk management programs, including agri-stability, for which we have improved some of the mechanisms.
Okay, I will go on with questions, but also just an excuse to Mr. Blois for mispronouncing his name. Let's go to now to Mr. Massey for Windsor West. Go ahead, Mr. Massey.
During the COVID pandemic, the state of Michigan has become an epicenter of the outbreak. The city of Detroit alone has more deaths than the entire province of Ontario. The border communities of Sarnia and Windsor have higher per capita infection rates than the rest of the province. Next week, the border restrictions between the U.S. and Canada expire. With the premiers of BC, Quebec, and Ontario responding against this opening of the border at this time, will the restrictions be extended, or is the Prime Minister discussing changing the restrictions?
The Honourable Minister.
Let me just assure the honourable member that first and foremost, all decisions about Canada's border are taken by Canadians with the health and safety of Canadians first and foremost in mind. When it comes to the current agreement coming up at next week, we are in very close conversation with the Americans about next steps.
Let's go back to Mr. Massey. Go ahead.
What changes are on the table?
The Honourable Minister.
Let me just be clear that I didn't speak about any changes. I spoke about a conversation with our American neighbors, which is very collaborative about next steps.
So are you discussing any changes in the current status right now?
I found during the NAFTA negotiations that negotiations are best not conducted in public, but let me just assure Canadians that the health and safety of Canadians is first and foremost. Our government is taking a cautious approach, and we're working effectively.
This is not negotiation. This is whether there's changes on the table. What are they?
Honourable Minister.
Let me just say, I think the honourable member was actually seeking to know what exactly is being discussed with our American partners. And let me just say, we are taking a very cautious approach to the health and safety of Canadians. A very collaborative discussion is happening.
Mr. Massey.
Will more information be shared on Canadians and Americans crossing the border on both sides between your government and the American government?
Minister?
I'm not sure what the member is alluding to, but let me just say that the current arrangements are working extremely well. Non-essential travel is down very, very sharply. Essential travel, particularly for trade, continues, and that's a good thing too.
With border communities having more rates of infection, will they receive additional PPE and financial assistance to deal with loosening of current border restrictions being discussed?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Let me just emphasize to the honourable member, on a couple of occasions he has implied that a loosening of the current restrictions is being discussed. And let me be very clear, that is his assertion. I have not said that.
Mr. Massey.
Apparently we're meeting for nothing. I'll move to large commercial banks who are profiteering off or squeezing Canadians during this public health crisis. Credit card interest rates are still high from previous price gouging levels, despite numerous favors from the Liberals. There has not been changes significant. Van City Union demonstrated leadership when they set credit card rates at zero. Will the government use its statutory powers and force the banks to offer the credit card relief that Van City has already done?
Minister, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to say that we recognize the challenges that Canadians face, especially with issues like credit card rates. And that's exactly why we've been working on this issue since we came into office. We came to an agreement on interchange fees that was important for consumers. And most recently, during the COVID crisis, we've negotiated with the banks and encouraged them, and they have come out with reductions in their credit card fees that are significant and deferrals for customers.
And back to Mr. Massey.
Will you use your statutory powers, yes or no, to do what Van City has done to help Canadian consumers?
The Honourable Minister.
As I've said, Mr. Speaker, we're continuing to support consumers. We're continuing to work together with banks to make sure that they are giving the kind of support to their customers necessary. And we've seen actions in this regard supporting customers.
Mr. Massey, go ahead.
Why do banks have to profit at higher interest rates on Canadian consumers and retailer exchange rates during COVID-19?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to clarify that banks have come forward and given deferrals to customers in trouble and cut their interest by half, and that's been important on credit cards.
Time for one more short question. Go ahead, Mr. Massey.
Will the minister use his powers if the banks continue to charge interest rates on Canadian consumers higher than Van City? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, we will continue to work with banks to ensure they're supporting their customers, and what they've done on credit cards by cutting their fees in half is an important nod in that direction.
Alors, continuez.
So we will continue with the Honourable Member Jacques Bourde. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quebec is the largest producer of hydroelectricity in Canada, which is a renewable energy, and it is the pride of the Quebec nation. But the only problem is that it seems difficult to send it to the west of Quebec, for instance, in Ontario. This energy, which is competitively priced, would allow us to reduce our environmental footprint and reduce GHG emissions. So is this government going to show leadership by allowing to exchange renewable energies between the provinces, as we have suggested? The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister, please turn on your mic or unmute your mic. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. What I can say is that we're continuing to work on this issue. We know it's important to protect Canadians, and we're going to continue with our approach. Mr. Gord. Mr. Chair, the Canadian dairy producers and processors are being hard hit by the COVID-19 crisis and the new NAFTA agreement. In some cases, they are having monetary losses of between 10 and 15%, depending on the processed product. Can the government commit that its import permits in the NAFTA agreement be allocated to dairy processors and not directly to retailers? The Honourable Minister. Minister, please turn on your mic in French, on the French channel. I'm sorry. Yes, I can assure you that the compensation will be provided will be fair for our dairy producers. And I'd also like to underscore the fact that we have conserved supply management in the NAFTA negotiations. This is important for Canada and for Quebec, and I'm very happy that we were able to do so. Mr. Gord, Mr. Chair, the minister doesn't seem to understand the issue. The dairy processors in Canada are investing millions of dollars per year to provide consumers quality products and contribute to the GDP to the tune of $19 billion. Now we're asking these very same processors to make efforts to export these value-added Canadian products. Mr. Chair, the minister, is she committing to grant import licenses to dairy processors as opposed to encouraging American multinationals? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I fully understand, and I think we all understand, the importance of processors in our system throughout the country. And I can reassure all the members of the House that we're going to continue to work with processors, Canadian processors, as this agreement comes into effect. The Honourable Member, Mr. Gould. Mr. Chair, what we'll remember from this COVID-19 crisis is that Canadians with an effective high-speed internet access will come out of this less financially impacted than those who are cut off from the rest of the world. Is the government ready to invest to provide a high-speed internet access to all Canadians, regardless of where they live in Canada? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Gord.
Mr. Gord. Mr. Chair, the Canadian tourism sector is threatened to disappear in the present economic context. Within this industry, there are thousands of Canadians who are going to suffer, and they will have to redirect their careers in order to continue to live. In order to conserve the tourism sector, is the government going to invest in tourism infrastructure and at the same time make upgrades in terms of the restart and reopening of tourism sites? The Honourable Minister. The answer is yes. Are you on the French channel? Yes, I answered yes. That's it. And that's I'm going to be very happy to work with my colleague on that question. I know that the tourism sector is important for him and for the people in his riding. So let's work together and let's try to start up the tourism sector that has been harshly hit. There are lots of people who have lost their jobs and they need government assistance, and that's why we're there, and that's why we're holding their hands at this time that we're going through this difficult period to get to the other side.
We'll go to the honourable member for Saskatoon University, Mr. Tucker. Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. To the government through the chair, with respect to entering Canada's border, does the government consider spousal reunification as essential travel, yes or no?
The honourable minister.
Yeah, I thank the member for the question. The CBSA has exercised the appropriate discretion in determining when a non-Canadian citizen who has no status in Canada attempts to enter the country for any consideration considered non-essential, they are turned back because we have restrictions in place for non-essential travel.
Back to Mr. Tucker.
Respectfully to the minister, you're letting down Canadians. There's people being stranded, and you need to do better as a government. Changing gears a little bit, all Canadians would agree, or can agree, that the Prime Minister's requires suitable accommodation. So why did the government simply not tell Canadians that the Harrington Cottage needed rebuilt and massively expanded?
Just ask the honourable members to direct their questions through the chair. The honourable minister.
Flip it.
The NCC is an independent Crown corporation. It recognizes the importance of official residences over which it has jurisdiction. The work at Harrington Lake is part of a broader program to preserve and maintain and restore all official residences under NCC management, and we will support the NCC in its important work.
And back to Mr. Tucker.
Yes, through the chair to the government. Was there something in particular that this government did not want Canadians to know about the cottage, or the secret, or is secrecy all that this government knows how to do?
The honourable minister.
Mr. Speaker, this information was and has been public since 2018. There's no effort to hide any information from the public in this regard.
Mr. Tucker.
Respectfully to the chair, Canadians feel misled on this. They were not clear on what the expenses were, how large of an expansion there was.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, go ahead. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I believe this has absolutely nothing to do with the pandemic. The questions are of other in order, in my opinion. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable, the Honourable Government House Leader for his comment. Certainly the scope of the Special Committee on the COVID-19 pandemic does expect and anticipate that the subject matter will be related to the matter at hand with respect to COVID-19. So to ask honourable members to continue to keep those within the bounds. Of course, members will also know that we're unable to really gauge that until members have spoken. So I'd ask members to keep it on the subject. Let's go back to Mr. Tucker to finish his question, and we've got about 2 minutes remaining in this spot. Go ahead, Mr. Tucker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The point I was making is on transparency, or lack of transparency that is hurting our efforts with COVID-19. But changing gears onto CERB, who came up with the number for CERB, as in why $2,000? A senior gets $1,200. Now we're added another ad hoc program on top of that. People with disabilities at $1,600. I just would like to know a little bit more about how and who came up with those kind of unique numbers.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Working collaboratively between ESDC and the Department of Finance, we determined that that would be an appropriate amount based on what workers were earning and what we anticipated they would need to live, and what we anticipated workers would be losing by way of employment income.
Okay, and the last really quick question on, I've heard this in my office, charities and nonprofits that do not have their own payroll number are ineligible for the wage subsidy. Does the Prime Minister have a program fix coming so the charities and nonprofits can receive the wage subsidy?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will support, we understand the important role that charities and nonprofits are playing to help vulnerable Canadians at this difficult time. We've announced supports in the amount of $350 million to ensure that not only do they continue that great work, but expand it to serve the most vulnerable to get through the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, let's moving on to the next questioner, and we're going to Mr. Albuteyev from Edmonton Manning. Mr. Albuteyev, go ahead, your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week markets were shocked when leaks regarding the state of our economy made light before the market even opened. This caused worry to investors at home and abroad about the integrity of our markets and the nature of the leak, which is in itself is unprecedented. Mr. Speaker, Section 34 of Statistics Act indicates that every person who had taken the oath as indicated in subsection 6.1, A, willfully disclose or divulge directly or indirectly to any person not entitled under this act to receive the same any information obtained by him in the course of his employment that might exert an influence or an effect on the market value of any stocks, bonds, or other security or other product or article. Or B, uses any information described in the paragraph A for the purpose of speculating in any stocks, bonds, or other security or any other product or article, is guilty of an offense and liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $5,000 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years or to both. My question to the minister is this. Does the government consider this case to be subject of subsection A or B and a criminal offense? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable colleague for his question. He's absolutely right. The current situation with regards to the COVID crisis is deeply problematic, and we want to make sure that any information we share with the Canadian public with regards to economic measures or labor market numbers, that they follow the appropriate process, that the breach that occurred is completely unacceptable. Our government has denounced this breach. This is not the way we should deal with such sensitive information. The members alluded to several subsections within the Statistics Act. I can assure him that we are looking into this matter, that Statistics Canada is also looking into this issue as well. And going forward, we will ensure that such a breach does not occur, because it's important that we continue to have the confidence of Canadians during this current healthcare crisis.
Well, and back to Mr. Albuteyev.
Okay, I get this as a yes. So this matter should be investigated, yes or no?
Mr. Minister.
As I've indicated very clearly, what has happened is completely unacceptable. This breach should have not occurred. This matter is being looked into, and we want to make sure that going forward, we want to ensure Canadians going forward that.
And back to Mr. Albuteyev.
So in that case, you said the matter is, Minister said that the matter will be looked into. Basically, my understanding in that case that Statistics Canada is going to investigate itself. Or do you think, or does the minister think that the government should refer this to the RCMP?
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister. Let's activate the microphone.
He's speechless.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I had a bit of an issue there. Could not hear the question.
Okay, we'll just go back to repeat the question, Mr. Albuteyev.
Will Statistics Canada investigate itself, or will the government refer this to the RCMP?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are appropriate protocols in place to look into such breaches. Those protocols will be followed, and the appropriate actions will be taken to ensure such breaches do not occur going forward.
Mr. Albuteyev, we've got about a minute left, so go ahead.
The minister indicates that this will be investigated, but during the investigation into SNC Lavalin scandal, Liberal staff refused to cooperate. Will the minister commit today that all Liberal staff will cooperate with this investigation?
The Honourable Minister.
Again, we've been clear that it's important that any such breaches be taken seriously. It's unacceptable what has happened, and we will ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to make sure such breaches do not occur going forward.
Time for one short question, Mr. Abuteyev. Go ahead.
There is no doubt about the general terms, but I need to make sure that the government commit that Liberal staff will cooperate. Yes or no?
Minister.
The process is very clear. The protocols are very clear. The law is very clear, and we will make sure that the process is followed and the law is upheld.
Now we'll continue. The next question will go to Mr. Yordega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start my questions, I would like to thank the various ministers, parliamentary secretaries, and the Speaker of the House for reaching out to me during the severe flooding in Fort McMurray. Your support during these trying times is much appreciated, and thank you. The oil and gas industry is under severe strain. Over the past number of years, we have seen tremendous pressure on the federal government from anti-oil and gas lobby groups who have demanded that the oil sands be shut down. The federal Liberal government response to the anti-oil lobby was the introduction of the No More Pipeline Bill C-69 that will prevent any major oil and gas projects from being developed in Canada, and the oil shipping ban, Bill C-48, from the northern coast of British Columbia, which also had a negative effect on oil industry. These two bills alone push over $200 billion of investment out of Canada, causing the Alberta economy to retract to recession levels. To compound Alberta's economic problems, we have an international oil price war and the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused a huge drop in demand for oil. Mr. Chair, 48 days after the finance minister promised liquidity loans to oil producers and service companies, there's still no applications open for these loans. Can the Honourable Minister of Natural Resources tell us when the Liberals will act on their promise?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that we were able to announce some liquidity measures for large corporations today in the oil and gas sector. This will provide them the liquidity that they needed, and this is also the liquidity that they asked for. It was on April 17th that we started liquidity measures for small and medium-sized businesses in the oil and gas industry, and those are the ones that 85% of workers are affected. And today's measures now will complete that. I'm very happy that we've had such people as the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers come out and say this is what they asked for, this is what they need, and we have produced what they need in order to ensure the future competitiveness of Canada's oil and gas sector.
Mr. Yordega.
Mr. Chair, we have seen junior oil companies close their doors. The larger companies have sent contractors home and laid off employees. Many of these contractors are Indigenous companies, and they are having a difficult time qualifying for programs to save their businesses. Can the Honourable Minister of the Crown of Indigenous Relations inform us of the measures the government is taking to ensure there are no gaps in the current programs and commit to review the eligibility criteria for Aboriginal businesses struggling to qualify for financial help?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's oil sector provides jobs for more than 576,000 people, including 11,000 Indigenous people in every part of Canada. It is essential that we support those businesses. It is essential that we support the many Indigenous people that work in our oil and gas sector, particularly in Alberta and in Saskatchewan. We have provided supports for those businesses, and we will continue to do so. Also, in keeping in mind in many of these communities the importance of public health and safety, that being foremost in our minds.
Mr. Yordega.
Mr. Chair, Western Canada oil storage is under extreme pressure. If thermal projects such as SAGD are shut in, those facilities could be lost forever. If the global oil markets remain oversupplied into the summer and industry must shut down production, what is the government's plan to ensure Canada's energy security and the economic future of the oil sands with the potential shutdown of oil production?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have worked with industry, we have worked with provinces on every front to ensure the stability of the oil and gas sector of our country. We have concentrated on workers. We need the workers in our oil and gas sector in order to lower emissions, to achieve a greener economy. We need their determination, we need their ingenuity, we need to make sure that their jobs are held whole. So therefore, we are looking after workers, and we are looking at the companies that hold on to those jobs for those workers.
Mr. Chair, the government's assistance package for the Canadian oil and gas industry provides some hope to the industry. The lack of details and action has led to some challenges. Can the minister clarify on a medium-sized energy company's eligibility if the company is in default to a financial institutions? Do they still qualify for the Business Credit Availability Program?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we know that our oil and gas sector is suffering through two crises. We've got the impacts of COVID and the effects of a global price war, and we have been tackling both of these on each front. April 17th, we announced liquidity measures to support the small and medium-sized players. That make up 85% of the jobs in the sector. We've announced liquidity will be further made available to larger players, as well as through the BCAP program. We are making sure that more companies are eligible so that they can remain whole, so they can hold on to the jobs that we need.
Ms. May. Ms. May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, all colleagues. It's lovely to see all of you. My first question is directed to the Prime Minister. The question is at a higher level of abstraction. We all know that we're being told we need a vaccine, and the quest for a vaccine is all-consuming globally. But people who think about this issue and the question of the power structure, the profit motive, particularly Dr. Matthew Herder of the Public Health Law Institute at Dalhousie University, questioning this model. We know that Jonas Salk never sought a patent on his polio vaccine. Can we ensure that public dollars going to find a vaccine will result in a product that is shared globally, openly, and not for profit?
The Honourable Minister.
So, Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the member for her question. Our approach has been very clear when it comes to science. We have an open science model where we're working with different partners in different jurisdictions to help develop potential vaccines, to look at countermeasures and other therapeutics. And our goal is to make sure that we do so in a collaborative fashion, because this is a global pandemic. But make no mistake, if it's Canadian ingenuity and Canadian IP that's driving it, we want to support them as well.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, thank you, Mr. Chair. As a follow-up to the Minister, it was interesting to see that the claim made by this Public Health Institute at Dalhousie, that the wonderful research that was being done in Winnipeg on an Ebola vaccine, because of the for-profit motive and the interests in Big Pharma in seeing their market before they developed the product, it's alleged that the Ebola vaccine was actually delayed by the for-profit model. So I'm wondering if we might, again, Mr. Minister, consider examining this profit motive around the development of life-saving vaccines and other drugs. Is that a conversation that the Minister is having with others?
The Honourable Minister.
So again, I'd like to thank the member for her question. I'm working very closely with my colleague, Minister Haidu, as well as the Chief Science Advisor, to look at all options. And I'm glad she highlighted the Ebola virus, which was developed here in Canada. I'm also proud of the fact that the DNA sequencing for SARS was also done in Canada. So we have incredible scientists and researchers. We are engaging with them, and we are empowering them, and we'll continue to share those details with the public.
Ms. May.
Thank you. Changing gears, we know that the new regulations limiting what is described as military-style assault rifles and guns has been very controversial. I wanted to ask the Minister, it's very clear to me as an opposition member why we haven't seen legislation on any fast track. It's obviously not the sort of legislation that would gain unanimous consent. I wanted to ask the Minister if it wouldn't be wise to table for first reading the entire legislative framework so that we know what we're talking about long term in terms of the buyback program and other aspects of this.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, I want to take the opportunity to thank the member for the question, and I want to assure her that at the first opportunity, we will bring forward legislation dealing with a number of aspects of our commitment to strengthen gun control in Canada, including legislation to deal with a potential a buyback program, which we've indicated we will put in place. There are a number of other significant measures as well that we intend to bring forward to strengthen gun control legislation. We understand it's a priority. That the pandemic is not does not diminish our responsibility to do what is necessary to keep Canadians safe, and we will bring that legislation forward at the first opportunity.
Ms. May.
Thank you. I will confess that I was disappointed by this morning's announcement on support for seniors. I had been hoping for much more because I hear from many seniors. But I'm going to focus my question to the minister on the issue for seniors' homes that are held and run by not-for-profit societies that are actually running very well, and certainly in my community, but they're facing increased costs that could bankrupt them. And as yet, there's no program to help a well-run seniors home, which is not experiencing a loss of revenue and has lots of staff working hard, but they have increased costs for wages and increased costs for PPE and nowhere to look for help. Is there help coming?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I share my gratitude to the many people who are working in these long-term care facilities day and night to keep seniors safe. And she certainly highlighted that not only is there additional expense for some of the not-for-profit seniors' homes, but also additional new measures that will increase all kinds of things, including costs. We continue to work with the provinces and territories to support them through, for example, generous transfers of money to boost their healthcare systems in ways that they think are most appropriately used. We continue to have the conversations at the health minister's table on how we support them. Thank you.
The next question will go to Mr. Davies.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are appalled by the disgraceful treatment of seniors in care homes across this country. Old folks are being left in soiled clothing, going without baths for weeks, and packed 4 to a room in dangerously unhealthy conditions. The situation is so bad that the armed forces have had to be called in to intervene. To the Minister of Health, is her government prepared to take strong action to address this crisis in seniors' health care?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think the member has illustrated some of the horror stories that have appalled us all as Canadians, and certainly as parliamentarians. We know that seniors deserve to live in dignity and safety with the utmost care, and that just hasn't been happening in this time of COVID, but certainly in some cases in previous time as well. So as the member knows, I've said publicly that I believe that we need to hold long-term care homes to stronger standards. I have begun those preliminary conversations with my counterparts. I'm working with many ministers across our government to think about how we do that,
to Mr.
Davies.
The Minister of Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, if we treated children the way we do seniors in this country, social services would seize them. Over 80% of the deaths in Canada from COVID-19 have occurred in long-term care homes. Canada has the highest proportion of deaths in long-term care settings among 14 comparable countries, including France, Germany, Denmark, and Ireland. Canadians want action. What specifically is the minister going to do about the crisis in long-term care?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I think the member opposite knows that long-term care homes have rested largely in the jurisdiction of provincial governments and, in fact, municipal governments who often run them and fund them partially as well. That's why it is important that we have those conversations with our provincial and territorial partners. But the member can rest assured this is on the top of my priority list to engage with my colleagues all across the country, including many experts who have studied this issue multiple times, to come up with stronger standards so that all seniors have quality of life and safety and dignity in their elder years.
Mr. Davies.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians don't want politicians pointing fingers at each other. They want our seniors taken care of. COVID-19 didn't cause the problems, it exposed them. Decades of neglect by governments at all levels have resulted in this calamity. Not a single province or territory in Canada is meeting the minimum standards of hands-on care for seniors. And death rates from COVID-19 in private for-profit facilities are 2 to 3 times that of public or nonprofit homes. Will the minister agree with New Democrats that we need strong national standards, federal funding tied to enforcement, and public delivery of care to effectively improve care for seniors?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And certainly the Member of Parliament has made an assertion that there's finger pointing. I don't think that's the case at all. As a matter of fact, what I hear from my colleagues at the provincial and territorial level is a willingness to collaborate on how we, first of all, get through this crisis together and strengthen the safety for seniors in homes right now, and then how we look to the future to build a stronger network of long-term care or care alternatives that will ensure that seniors have the right and the ability to live with dignity and safety in their homes.
Mr. Davies. Well, Mr. Speaker, what I'm not hearing is a single concrete proposal or measure that this minister is suggesting her government can take. But let me move to another subject. Like long-term care, COVID-19 has exposed other major gaps in our healthcare system. Millions of Canadians lost their prescription benefits when they lost their jobs, revealing the fundamental weakness of medical coverage tied to employment status. Will this government finally move to ensure every Canadian gets the medicine they need by bringing in universal public health care, pharmacare at its earliest opportunity?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as you know, in the mandate that the Prime Minister gave to me, working on a national pharmacare plan is still there. I know it feels like a lifetime ago, but the member has very aptly illustrated why affordable medication is so important as part of a robust public healthcare system. And I look forward to continuing our work on ensuring that all Canadians can afford the medication they need.
Nous allons maintenant continuer avec...
We'll now proceed with Mr. Simard. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you remember, no doubt, a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister announced his will to implement a renewal economic plan in order to turn towards a green type of economy. And so this was made up of Ministers McKenna, Guilbeault, and Wilkinson. I'm afraid that this small group might be an empty shell, because when I look at the two main announcements that have been made in relation to natural resources, we see that they've put emphasis on fossil energy. We're talking about $1.7 billion for orphan wells. But what I don't understand is the announcement made by Export Development Canada of a loan of $500 million to TC Energy for the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And so this will produce 8.6 million tons of GHGs per year. And so I'm wondering how the government can coordinate that with its will to turn towards a green economy. The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister. You might be on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much for the question. Certainly at this time, Canadians are most particularly focused on ensuring that support is provided so that they can put food on the table and pay their rent. And we are starting to obviously focus on the relaxation measures in many provinces and territories in Canada. That is the primary focus of the government, as it is of Canadians. But certainly as we move forward, we need to be thinking about the kind of society and economy that we want to create for the future. And certainly in that context, we need to learn lessons coming out of this experience. And certainly we need to ensure that we are addressing challenges that are on the horizon, including the challenge of climate change. Those are conversations that will need to be had as we move beyond this phase of the crisis. But at the current time, the focus is clearly on combating the virus.
Monsieur Simard.
Point of order. Point of order. Go ahead, Madame Bozet. Yes, there was no translation for the response of the minister.
Y a un problème parce que moi je suis sur
I'm on the French channel and I heard it in French. I didn't receive any translation either. And I didn't receive any translation into French either.
On the English channel?
I'm on the English.
Okay. Une seconde. I'm just going to pause a moment and try to figure out what's going on at this end. Oh, je m'excuse. C'est moi qui.
I'm sorry, I'm on the French channel now. So what I'm going to do is take a break, a short break, and then I'll come back to you. We'll see what's going on.
Alors, ce que nous allons faire.
So what we're going to do is that I'm going to ask for the minister to answer the question a second time, and we'll see if the translation is working. And if it's not working, well, then perhaps let me know, anybody who doesn't hear it. Well, perhaps it might be better if I try to speak in French. Yes, of course, there are issues for the future that are tremendously important, and that includes climate change and other issues that we have to look at. And we've seen that they were issues during coronavirus, but I think that Canadians expect that we now have time to think about what's going on at this point. There were rules to protect Canadians. We also have to think a great deal about that, and we also have to have a plan. Of course, we have to talk about the future. We'll go back to Mr. Simard now. Mr. Simard. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, look, I can tell you that one of the forest industries, or one of the industries that's the best place in order to deal with this energy transition is the forest sector. But when we talk about the energy sector, it's two different measures that are applied, especially when we talk about access to liquidity and credit. The announcement that was made yesterday said that there would be $500 million that would be given to a coastal gas pipeline. And if I were to say that in 2017, in the softwood action plan, the entire amount of money for the entire forestry sector was $500 million, whereas there's $500 million for coastal gas line and $500 million for 2017 for the softwood sector, and it was dealing with import taxes. And so I'm talking about that this is an unfair situation. And so my question is for the Minister of Natural Resources is the following. Does he find this to be a fair situation, and can he offer access to liquidity that would be similar to the forest sector as would be given to the fossil fuel sector? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chair, since 2017, our government has been investing. I'm sorry.
I will. Actually, what I'll do is I'll answer the question in English. Je m'excuse. So, we launched our softwood lumber action plan to support workers and communities. We introduced funding through the Strategic Innovation Fund specifically for forestry. Building on our work today, we've included additional investments to make sure that this sector innovates, diversifies, grows. I have spent over these past 2.5 months an inordinate amount of time with CEOs, with heads of the forestry sectors from coast to coast to coast. In fact, just a few days ago, convened a meeting of CEOs from all parts of the country, from Quebec to British Columbia, all parts of this country, to talk to them about solutions, about answers. For some of them, the liquidity measures that were announced yesterday will help them. We will continue to work closely with industry to make sure that we are there for them and that we stand by them through the COVID crisis, till we make sure that our forestry industry remains as competitive as it was before.
Mr. Dalton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm hearing from small business owners like Joel, who runs a fitness club here in Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge, and is very concerned that their landlords refuse to participate in the rent assistance program. These businesses have seen revenue drops between 50 to 100% and are asking for just 25% off of their rent. When will the government help small businesses whose landlords refuse to be team players during this pandemic?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me just say to the member that we share his concern that small businesses are supported. That's why we've moved forward with a number of measures that are designed to be of assistance. With respect to the rent support, we are encouraging landlords to support this measure. Obviously, rent, landlord-tenant relations are a provincial jurisdiction. At every opportunity, I talk to the provincial finance ministers to encourage them to get engaged here. But what I can say is we will continue to be supporting small businesses. We believe this program has significant merit. It allows for small businesses to significantly reduce their rent and for landlords to be protected with up to 75% of the rent. So we think it's an excellent program. It will require the provinces to step forward and enforce it.
Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Speaker, here in BC, businesses are preparing for phased reopenings. A number of my constituents, including Kathy, who owns a beauty salon, are concerned about meeting the PPE requirements. What is the federal government doing to ensure businesses in my riding can get access to the PPE they need to keep their employees and customers safe when they reopen?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are, as a federal government, aggressively buying life-saving equipment and supplies. Our first priority is to provide PPE to our frontline healthcare workers. However, we are actively involved in trying to ascertain how the federal government can work with the provinces and territories to provide essential services and other businesses with PPE. Thank you.
The Honourable, Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Speaker, Craig and Matt are co-owners of Wanstalls, a firearms retail outlet in downtown Maple Ridge that employs 8 people and serves thousands of law-abiding firearm owners in my riding, people who are made to feel like criminals now by this Liberal government. Further, they are now stuck with tens of thousands of dollars of inventory that they can no longer sell. What are they supposed to do to keep open in this already tumultuous COVID environment?
The Honourable Minister.
Again, I'd thank the member for the question. And I think it's important to understand that none of the restrictions that we have put in place and the new prohibitions in any way impact weapons that are used for the lawful purposes in Canada of hunting and sport shooting. And so those weapons remain available to Canadians engaged in those lawful activities. And what we've prohibited, quite frankly, are weapons that were not intended for the legal purposes which firearms are available to Canadians of hunting and sport shooting, but rather were designed for another and unacceptable purpose.
Go back to Mr. Dalton, please.
Mr. Speaker, according to the CERB website, if a recipient earns over $1,000 in a reporting period, their entire $2,000 benefit must be repaid. I have constituents who are working part-time and casually. They're worried if they take an extra shift, they will lose their CERB. But if they refuse the shift, they will also lose their CERB. Classic Liberal catch-22. A worker may unknowingly make over the $1,000 by a couple of dollars. Does the government intend to make them repay all of their CERB if they barely got over the threshold?
The Honourable Minister.
I thank the member for the important question. Mr. Speaker, that's why we're working individually with eligible CERB recipients to make sure they're not put in positions of undue hardship. At the beginning, we had the legislation restricted the basically to not working, and then we relaxed the condition to earning up to $1,000. I can assure the member that we'll work with individuals. Service Canada is reaching out to people so that nobody's in the difficult position he's talking about.
Point down, Monsieur le Président.
Oui.
Point of privilege? There were technical problems with my colleague Mario Simard earlier. Normally there are 5 minutes per person. I calculated that he's got at least 45 seconds left. So I think it's very important. I don't think we should be disadvantaged for speaking French in this chamber. Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, we will check. But what we did was suspend the clock. So we stopped the clock. Well, I think he didn't get all his time. Well, we will check and make sure that doesn't happen again. We'll check the time. And the thing is, the good thing about this is the whole thing is filmed and we can look at the video and double check. Well, Mr. Chair, what I'm saying is that because ministers decided to answer in French and because it was there was a technical problem, my colleague lost some time, and I think my colleague deserves one more question. It would be more fair, because otherwise Francophones are seriously disadvantaged. Thank you. Thank you, and I will check to see what happened, and we'll come back with a solution for the next time, if so. Call to order. Yes. Another call to order. Mr. Guibault. I hope my colleague isn't saying that because some MPs in the House, some members in the House are making efforts to speak French, that they're drawing out their time. I think that they are doing their utmost to work in the second language for the benefit of the other members in this chamber. I hope that's not what he was suggesting. I think we're beginning to have a debate. I don't want us to start a fight about different languages. We'll see what happened. We'll have a look and we'll make sure that it doesn't reoccur so.
30 seconds for a question.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, many farmers in my riding and across the country who fear they will not have enough labor for this season and for this fall. What will the government do for those who are receiving the CERB and the CESB to ensure that there is enough labor available to the agricultural sector? The Honourable Minister, 15 seconds or less, please. The Honourable Minister.
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, I can.
Oh, my apologies to everyone. Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member that we are, while we're supporting Canadians through both the CERB and the CESB, we are creating thousands and tens of thousands of jobs including in the agriculture sector, to make sure that there is labor available in this important and essential service sector. Thank you.
And that's all the questions we have for today. I want to thank everyone. When I first got elected as Speaker, one of the things I mentioned was you'd want everyone watching to be proud of you, your family, your friends. I can honestly say that they would all be very proud of what we went through today. And I know I'm very proud of today's session. And I want to thank everyone for wearing the headsets. I didn't see anybody answer without one, and it's very much appreciated, not only by our fellow members, but the people who are translating into the other language that you're not speaking. So for all of you, thank you again. This committee stands adjourned until tomorrow at noon. Je vous souhaite tous une bonne journée.